A day-to-day life of a person living with narcolepsy is full of unpredictability. This is through managing sudden sleep attacks and constant fear of embarrassment.
Narcolepsy, a rare lifelong disorder of the central nervous system, is characterized by the brain's inability to control sleep-wake cycles. In Tasia Estate in Nairobi County, I met Juliet Rogito, a student who has lived with narcolepsy for the last 8 years. Juliet, who realized she was suffering from narcolepsy in class 7, says people often mistook her condition for lack of discipline. At that time, Juliet was 13 years old, and her teachers related her sleeping condition as a sign of being overworked by her mother, something that traumatized her.
I used to fall asleep during class. I remember one time I was told to go to the field and run and go to the tap and wash my face. There were so many scenarios when I remember teachers used to think that I'm probably not getting enough sleep at night.
The social work and community development student says incidents such as falling asleep while walking, coupled with many other scary ones, bothered her mom, who took her to a nearby chemist for consultation.
I would fall asleep during class. I would fall asleep in the car on the way to school. In the evenings, there were some extreme times when I would fall asleep while walking home. It was, you fall asleep while eating, you fall asleep while taking a shower, while in the loo.
Juliet says dealing with the stigma has been like carrying an invisible weight on her shoulders, since not everyone is willing to listen or understand. She experienced several frustrations, explaining to her friends the knowledge she had about her condition, but all was in vain since her friends remained adamant.
At times they'd ask if it's contagious or if it's sleeping sickness, or maybe other times if I can sleep for a whole day straight without waking up. Another one even asked if one day I'd sleep and I'd never wake up.
Despite narcolepsy being an incurable disease, Juliet says her condition has made her give up in taking drugs, even though they suppress cataplexy, which is the sudden loss of muscles.
In 2015, drugs were, you'd spend 2,500 for drugs which will last you only 2 weeks. So it was a bit too much, especially for drugs which actually only promote wakefulness. They don't guarantee that you won't fall asleep during the day.
Despite her family being incredibly supportive, Juliet says explaining narcolepsy to her friends has been challenging since they see her flaking on them. There was a time she found herself dozing off while precariously balanced on the wall. Unaware of her predicament, her friends startled, grappling with the surreal sight before them, and wished her friends could have seen beyond the unusual circumstance and offer support rather than withdrawing.
Some of them took pictures of me, and it wasn't nice. It felt like there's this whole part of you that you can't change, and you just have to live with it.
Raphael Ndungu, an electrical engineer in Utawala Estate, says his condition made him a job creator since in his previous job, his employer became impatient of him.
Nitafuta kazi ambayo ni kazi ninakuwa nikimove from here to there to avoid that characteristic ya kuwa unarara. Labda umeenda pale, umevuta waya, hiyo ndio kazi nimebidi nichague juu. Kama ni udereva siwezi, kama ni kazi ya kuandikwa siwezi.
The 36-year-old man, who has lived with the condition for more than 2 decades, says he has had to modify his lifestyle, including avoiding eating hot meals.
Siwezi kuja nikwambie nitakufanyia kazi na nitarara. So lazima nitakwambia au sisikii vizuri, labda wacha nitulie 1 hour or 2 hours. Then nirudi niendelee na kazi. Juu siwezi manage to work the whole day continuous.
Even as he navigates the numerous challenges he faces, Raphael calls for support that extends beyond his personal struggles from the government and other key stakeholders and urges them to understand.
Kama ni huyo mtoto uko narcoleptic, wacha mwalimu ampe support. Kama ni mimi niko na narcoleptic, tajiri yangu asinibague juu ya niko narcoleptic. As well as nimemwelezea na anaelewa huyu jamaa ni mgonjwa this and this, that's the only thing that we should give support to these people.
Despite popular misconceptions, Raphael says narcolepsy is more than just an occasional urge to take a nap. He has learned something valuable along the way, which is the power of self-acceptance.
Sio about being lazy, ni about your body to control that sleeping thing. So mimi nilijikubali na unajua like after attending this doctor, hapo ndio alinikosoa akaniambia hii ugonjwa iko hivi na hivi, I'm not the only one. Then nikajua tuko wengi.
James Ngare, a seasoned trader at Nyamakima who deals with mobile phones accessories, says misdiagnosis took a toll on his career and made him spend months trying to cope with a problem he didn't fully understand.
The time I was in high school and campus, I went to many hospitals and none of the doctors I visited mentioned about narcolepsy. I came to know about narcolepsy on a newspaper.
James says misdiagnosis taught him the importance of questioning, seeking second opinions, especially when it came to something crucial as health. Just like Juliet, James was given drugs called Ritalin that promote wakefulness and reduce excessive daytime sleepiness, but they proved a burden to him since they were very expensive and rare to get.
After taking them, they had side effects. So even by the time I did away with them, I didn't even tell my parents.
While narcolepsy can affect people of any age, symptoms always start in childhood to early adulthood, roughly from ages 7 to 25. Marianne Nyambura, an advocate for narcolepsy at Narcolepsy Africa Foundation, says the journey hasn't been easy, but it has made her help others understand and navigate the complexities of this condition. According to Marianne, comprehensive awareness campaigns through use of informational materials, online resources, and social media initiatives have reached broad audience and helped in dispelling misconceptions about narcolepsy.
Now, just by speaking out and telling people that it's not while I'm with you that's the time I'm falling asleep. This is something that economy kills. So that's how I found myself raising awareness of advocacy work.
Marianne says her aim is building a community that understands, supports, and empowers each other, thus dispelling myths and creating a world that is more inclusive.
We've been able to do a lot, like now the Ministry of Health, tulikuwa na kikao last year, so at least they now recognize that we have rare conditions in Kenya that also includes narcolepsy and other rare conditions.
The 27-year-old software designer urges employers to consider implementing employee assistance programs for narcolepsy employees that cater for mental and physical health, thus boosting productivity and overall well-being.
The fact that we keep falling asleep several times a day does not make us lazy.
Anthony Muli, the CEO of Entice Africa Safaris, says creating a workplace that accommodates and supports employees with narcolepsy not only enhances their quality of life, but also strengthens the bonds of their team.
Whenever I hear anybody trying to judge that so-and-so always looks sleepy or something of the sort, so I try also to educate them and tell them to research more on the scene.
Anthony further says, inasmuch as the disease affects work productivity, other employers should give people with narcolepsy a chance so long as they have passion in it. Data from the Center for Narcolepsy at Stanford University estimates that narcolepsy affects approximately 1 in every 2,000 individuals and about 3 million people worldwide. However, medication and lifestyle changes can help manage the symptoms.
Good shape, lakini magoti umemaliza.
Dr. Simeon Ochanda, a neurologist at Kenyatta National Hospital, says diagnosis of narcolepsy is determined from history and by use of a somnograph machine, since some people display abnormal movements such as restless leg syndrome, epilepsies, and seizures during sleep.
When we put you on the somnograph machine, it measures how much REM, how much non-REM. And when you are sleeping, there are neurological changes we see. And the pattern of which you see shows you whether the sleep is normal. Things like sleep spindles.
Genetic factors such as hypocretin, also known as orexin, age, and other triggering infections or inflammation play important roles in development of narcolepsy.
People with narcolepsy, okay, the inhibitory neurotransmitters will usually be higher. Okay, so they inhibit normal function. And when you inhibit normal function, of course you go off, you switch off.
It's essential for individuals experiencing symptoms of narcolepsy to consult with a neurologist, since specific treatment plan will depend on the type and the severeness of narcolepsy symptoms. He further says genetic abnormalities metabolize these neurotransmitters, thus affecting sleep.
The stimulatory neurotransmitters will be lower. The stimulatory neurotransmitters promote brain activity and increase wakefulness.
Dr. Chanda says even though there are drugs that ensure wakefulness, patients need to have a regular sleeping pattern and good sleeping hygiene.
This drug we call modafinil and modafinil. This one help cut sleep, makes you awake. It modifies neurological mechanisms of sleep, resetting the circadian, resetting the neurotransmitters correctly so that you are awake.
Dr. Chanda further envisions the future of research on narcolepsy by anticipating a multidimensional approach, incorporating advances in genetics and one which will be patient-centered.
I am seeing in the future us developing drugs, monoclonal antibodies that will control these genes and prevent them from causing problems. Then from very early when they start, you need to correct these genes. The problem is sorted out.
The latest developments in the field of medicine is the production of specific antibodies that will suppress or stimulate specific genes. Dr. Catherine Karagezi, the Executive Director of Non-Communicable Disease Alliance, says through an initiative dubbed Our Voice, Our Voices, many people living with rare conditions have been able to document their stories and received necessary support.
We do provide opportunities for training in advocacy and also for training in public participation so that persons living with narcolepsy and other non-communicable diseases are empowered in order to, one, speak for themselves, identify the needs that they have, and then be able to put these needs into proposals which they can submit to the duty bearers, the county governments, the Minister of Health, and so on.
Dr. Karagezi further says, despite numerous challenges that people with narcolepsy undergo, there are a good number of success stories from many of them.
But there are a couple that I've interacted with who have now been able to at least complete their education, and they've done some tertiary education in colleges, and they now have, even if they don't have what we would call, they do have regular employment, although many of them are self-employed.
To several misconceptions associated with the disease, such as witchcraft, Dr. Karagezi says they are doing a lot to fight the menace. She further urges people living with this condition to serve as champions by standing up, shed the cloak of silence, so that they can dispel stigma, foster understanding, and empower one another in the journey against narcolepsy.
One has to come to the position where you are willing to do it. So we don't force individuals to speak. They have to volunteer to speak and to declare that I'm living with this, with narcolepsy, whatever condition it is, and therefore be willing to speak out, educate the community, and also advocate to the duty bearers.
Dr. Karagezi also calls for modalities to provide training to healthcare professionals on rare diseases such as narcolepsy, as well as increase the number of neurologists.
Let's look at how we can capacity build the middle-level healthcare providers, the clinic officers, the nurses, the pharmaceutical technologists, and so on, for them to be aware about some of these rare conditions and how they can at least assist in terms of people managing those conditions.
Dr. Karagezi calls on the government to put more focus on rare diseases such as narcolepsy and find amicable solutions to address them.
We should not leave anyone behind. So people living with these rare conditions should also be on the table, should also have resources allocated towards this condition, even if the numbers are not that many, but the burden for them is high in terms of the treatment and all the other issues that go with living with these rare conditions.
There is no data on the condition available in Kenya indicating need to invest in more resources and training of caregivers.